This is the second video in a series on maths teaching tips based on research by Craig Barton. One of the fundamental tips from Craig Barton's book is to regularly include worked examples. Firstly, split the whiteboard into two columns headed Worked Example or My Turn and Your Turn on the right. In the left column, slowly work through an example using either concrete, pictorial, or abstract representations. If you're using concrete resources, the columns could be on a desk, carpet space, or a visualizer. Students should then copy this example down into their books if it's written, or physically manipulate concrete resources themselves so that they can refer to them later, and also practice using the method or concrete resource correctly. Then, write down a similar example in the Your Turn column, or task students to manipulate a concrete resource in a very similar way for students to practice themselves. Worked examples should be used during the teacher modelling or the I part of instruction. Worked examples work best when you include the following steps. Firstly, for the first example, don't talk and ask questions or check for understanding. Pupils should just watch and listen quietly. Don't talk while modelling the first example. This avoids the split attention effect. Tell students you're going to model silently. You could call it silent teacher mode. Pause briefly between each step, giving students time to think about what the method is and why. To ensure students are thinking about the method, challenge them to remember how you're doing it. After the method is completed on the board, talk through the method slowly and write down steps to success on the side. Ask students to copy the example down. Then work through another example. This time, stop and ask rhetorical questions at each stage of the calculation, such as, why am I doing this? What's my next step? Why did I exchange 10 ones for 1 10? Give students time to reflect. This directs their thought process to the specific learning point each time. After, explain your reasoning, and this is an example of the talk out loud technique. Here's an example of what this could look like for students on a whiteboard. So on the left column, you can see the teacher's worked example, and on the right, there is a structurally very similar example for students to practice. This is important as you want students to focus their working memory on the method and not additional steps they haven't yet learnt. To the right of the table, include concise steps to success for students to refer to. The next stage of instruction is where student interaction is required. The I part of instruction focused on ensuring students' attention was firmly on learning and the specific steps to succeed. Now, give students time to practice some examples. This should only be 1 or 2 examples so that you can quickly gauge their understanding so far. During this time, circulate around the classroom and check students' workings. Identify any misconceptions to address and support anyone who needs reminders. After everyone has finished at least the first question, check their answers either by asking the class to hold up their work or by quickly self-marking and asking for a raise of hands. At this point, show call a good example. This could be by having a student modelling their correct method to the class on the whiteboard and explaining their methodology. It could be by showing a written peer example on a visualizer or even just holding it up for the class. Once this has been done, address any misconceptions you have found and work through another example with the class, but this time ask lots of questions and see if students can help you complete the example. This could be by breaking up the different steps and getting a different student to complete each step for you. At this point, you should use your own judgment. Are students ready to move on and complete more independent practice? If so, then have questions ready for them to do. This is the you stage. If not, give students more worked examples to practice first. If there are just a handful of students who are not quite ready, you can turn the first few independent questions into more worked examples and work with them in a small group while others start their independent work. In the next video, we will look at more tips from Craig Barton's research.